Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our first Masterclass of 2022, our February Masterclass with Kylie Paatsch. We're excited to have you here. My name is Zachary Henderson. It's lovely to meet you all. This session is recorded and will be uploaded to our website in the following weeks. If you wish to review it later on, you can find it on our member resources page. And before we start today, I'd like to acknowledge the Wadawurrung traditional owners of the land upon which we stand today, the respective areas on which you all gather, and all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us and who are a part of the greater Geelong community. I pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I would like to acknowledge our corporate partners, our gold and silver partners, and our executive members, and especially a big thanks to our platinum partner, Pixeled. Now, I'll introduce Kylie Paatsch, who's an executive leadership coach and facilitator from The Fearless Way. She'll be your presenter for this masterclass, and you're in very capable hands. Hi, Kylie, how are you doing?
I'm great, thanks, Zachary. I'm really good. It's a bit nerve-wracking when you say in very capable hands and don't me up. No, I'm only joking. I'll actually start by sharing my screen before I get started. So good morning, everybody, and thank you for that lovely introduction, Zach. It is a privilege and an absolute honour to be able to run this masterclass today for the Chamber. As a business owner and leader and someone that has been involved in both those things for, well over 20 years, I, like most of you, have found the last 24 months, which I can't believe we're almost up to that, a little bit challenging. And whilst I've always known that being in business means that there'll always be constant change and there'll always be uncertainty, I'm sure you would join me in expressing that perhaps the change and the uncertainty that we've been in for the last, for that last period of time was a little bit more intense and was a little bit longer than we had, we any of us could have envisaged. So Zach briefly mentioned that I'm a executive leadership coach and facilitator. So my background essentially is in operational leadership and human resources. So I spent a long time in the travel industry, working in all different role types. Like I've majority of that time was leading teams, so running and operating small businesses, then running and operating regions and states and brands and divisions. And the last 15 years I've been involved in that human resources space. So what I would love to do today is to share some of the knowledge, some of the tips, some of the tricks, and some of the resources that I've learned along the way that have helped me navigate change, uncertainty, and unpredictability. And I really believe that what I share with you today, some of it you'll already know, some of it you'll already be applying. What my intent is that it will ease some pressure for you. It will help you and your employees navigate the period of time that we're in, or that we have been in, and the period of time that we're still in now. Although it is, it is opening up a little bit more, which is wonderful, and to help you focus and get on with, what's really important to you, to your business, your employees, and the goals and things and vision that you want to achieve. So I can't remember what's on my next slide, but I'll have a look. So what I'd like to do, the coach in me and the facilitator in me would like to start off by asking a couple of questions. So when it comes to change, uncertainty, and unpredictability, I'd love for you to just take a moment to write down wherever you are, whether it's on the back of a napkin or you might even want to type it into your phone or whatever is available to you. When it comes to change, uncertainty, and unpredictability, what is your biggest personal challenge right now? What is your biggest employee or team challenge right now? And what would be a great outcome for you from this workshop? So I'm going to imagine that I can see you all and that we're writing this down, but just take a moment to record it down, and then we'll continue on with the session. Should maybe be playing some background music or something. Anyway. So hopefully you've had a little chance, I haven't given you a long time, to write that down. And if you haven't, feel free to keep writing. What I thought would be really good is just to get started with what it means to experience change, uncertainty, and unpredictability. And there's at least 4 guarantees when we go into any sort of change. There'll always be an ending, there'll always be a transition period, there'll always be some uncertainty, and there'll always be some new beginnings or a new stage. And the other guarantee that often happens when there is a change or some uncertainty or some unpredictability is that we will experience a range of emotions. And I'm sure that you can relate to some of these, and you've probably perhaps expressed some of these over, the last period particularly. But in the 1990s, there was a change consultant by the name of William Bridges, who came up with a model that really explains or demonstrates all those guarantees or all those elements of change that I just mentioned: the emotions, the beginnings, the transition, the endings, the new beginnings, all those things. He created this model that really explains that quite well, and it's called the Bridges transition model. And I wanted to show it to you this morning so that that you get a sense of what we go through when we are in change or uncertainty. And so, as I mentioned, his model proposes that there's always an ending, that there's then this transition or neutral zone that we go through, and then that we go through a new beginning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down each of these zones or these stages and talk you through them a little bit. So the first one, the stage 1, is the end zone. So this is where we're letting go or leaving behind something. So a change has occurred, and we can't go back to what it was. So we're actually letting go of something. And in this period, there's a lot of uncertainty. So particularly if it's a change that we didn't expect. And what happens with change, even when we do want to make a change, we want to create a change, there'll still always be some uncertainty and unfamiliarity because it is new and it's different. But when it's a change that we haven't anticipated or that we didn't want, the levels of the intensity of uncertainty can be pretty high. And as I mentioned before, we'll experience, quite a range of different emotions here and feelings. And you can see that above here on the slide, excitement and anticipation. That's generally that uncertainty and that excitement and anticipation we have when it's a change that we have created. But if we look at what we've been through in the last, while, most of the uncertainty and a lot of the emotions that we've been feeling have been really around confusion and reservation and denial and frustration. So what William Bridges talks about is that we then want to actually transition into that next zone. And because our brains are wired for certainty, and we naturally want to progress to the next stage. So our brains actually crave and are wired for certainty. So when an ending happens, we'll actually move through to that next stage, to that transition stage. And this is the stage between the old and the new not necessarily being integrated yet. And it's a real stage of ambiguity, and it's a stage where we really we can be quite skeptical, that we really feel a lot of anxiety and resistance and, confusion. And again, we feel a lot more of that if it's a change that has taken place that we really haven't chosen to do. And I want to just unpack that certainty and that uncertainty piece a little bit. In the field of behavioral science and neuroscience, what they've been able to prove is that the brain, as I mentioned before, doesn't like uncertainty. Instead, it craves certainty, and it's wired to resist change. And because our brain is wired that way, and it really wants certainty, when things come out of the blue or things become less predictable and less controllable and ambiguous, we experience a strong state of threat, which is a fearful state. And that fearful state actually causes our brain to go into that freeze, fight, or flight response. And I'm sure most of you on this webinar would be familiar with that and would have heard that. And what happens is when our brain responds this way, we get decreases in motivation, we get a decrease in focus, agility, productivity, cooperation, self-control, a sense of purpose and meaning, and overall well-being. And this stage, if we go back to this stage, this is where we see really high levels of anxiety. In the workplace, this is where we see higher levels of absenteeism. And there's been a lot of information, a lot of stats, a lot of data that's been shared to say that, absenteeism, even though we are able to work from home, people are suffering, have been suffering, and some are still suffering at the moment. So, they're away from work, or they're really feeling high states of anxiety. And this is a stage as leaders where employees, or followers, if you would like to call them, really look to us, because they crave that certainty. They want that certainty. They know that they're a little bit confused, that they're confused. They're not really knowing what's next, where they're headed, but that's what they want. They look to us as leaders to help navigate their way through this. And it's a natural process for this to happen. But of course, when we're running businesses and changes are happening, our people are looking for us to do that. And they're really looking for us to take them to what Bridges calls stage 3, which is the new beginnings, or the new ways of doing things. And in this stage, this is where our people, those that follow us, those that work with us, are really looking for new understandings, new commitments, new ways of doing things, so that they can get to a level of certainty, or certainly to a level of acceptance. So I love sharing that model, because it really does remind us of the stages that we go through. These stages are all very, very normal. And also, if you think of the Bridges transition model, and you think of the period that we've probably been through some of these stages a few times. So we've had quite a few, endings, transition zones, neutral zones, and beginnings. And then, one thing's changed again, and we've gone back, which is why I guess everybody's calling it a little bit of a roller coaster. So knowing this as a leader can be really, really helpful, because it will help you understand what takes place when we go through change. It will also help you understand what it is that you can do to help navigate yourself and help navigate others. So what I want to do is just to have a look at some ways that, as leaders, that we can influence change and navigate uncertainty and unpredictability. Because, as I mentioned before, particularly when we're in any of those zones, our people, our employees, our team members are really looking to us to navigate that. So what I wanted to start off with was the very first thing that I believe is really, really important in navigating change and helping lead others through that. And that first part is to understand ourselves. It's to understand our preferences and to understand our biases when it comes to change, because some of us will have will be okay with change. Like, even though it might not be something that we really like, we might have a preference or a bias for, oh, this is something a little bit different. It's going to give me some variety. It's going to give me a little bit of uncertainty, something else to explore, something to look at. So there will be those amongst us that kind of like some of this change, because we get to create and we get to reinvent and we get to solve problems and find solutions. So knowing what our preferences and our biases are, but there'll be some of us that don't like that. Some of us that don't like change. We like to stick to our plans. We like to stick to our strategies and the things that we've had in place. And there's no wrong or right with this, but when we understand our preferences and biases for change, it can be really, really powerful and helpful. Just recently, I was working with a company, and we were doing a team session, and one of we're doing some honest feedback around what was working and what wasn't working. And one of the bits of feedback that was given to the CEO was that his staff actually, or his team actually felt really challenged by his bias for creativity and change and wanting to solve problems. And they said, we like that. We love that you want to do that and that you want to lead us somewhere, but you don't stop to think about what those changes might be, how that might impact us. So that was a really, really that was great feedback for him to get. And it was a great way of him seeing that he had a bias that was to keep moving forward really, really quickly without just taking stock and thinking about his team and where things are at there. The other, thing that's really important in understanding ourselves is our own fears. What are our own fears when a change has occurred? What fears come up for us? So really understanding and tapping into those and knowing those. There's 3 psychological fears that I work with, and if you think about it, most fears will fall into these buckets. But the 3 psychological fears are the fear of not belonging, the fear of not being good enough, and the fear of not being loved. And if you think of things like rejection and failure and all those things, they all sit under those 3 psychological fears, those 3 buckets. But when we're going through change, understanding and knowing those fears, what are those fears that we have, a preference or, a bias towards. Again, another leader that I was working with recently, we were unpacking this a little bit in a one-on-one coaching situation, said to me, I realize I have this fear of not being good enough. And what happens when I'm in change and I'm in uncertain certain times and I've got to lead people through it, I doubt myself because I think that I'm never doing enough, or I think that I'm never being enough. So that was really helpful for her to understand that. The other thing that's really helpful in understanding ourselves as we go through change and we lead others through change is knowing our strengths, and also knowing our weaknesses, knowing what we do well and knowing some of our pitfalls or the things that we don't do so well. When we have a real understanding of what we contribute, the positive impact that we have, or the sometimes not so positive impact we have, when we've got that real understanding and we've got that real awareness, it can be really, really helpful, not only for ourselves, but also navigating our teams through it. So there's so many really great things that you can use if you really want to expand your awareness. Like there's things like Myers-Briggs that help us unpack our personality preferences. There's tools like HBDI, which is about understanding our thinking preferences. There's DISC, which I know has been around for quite some time as well, like Myers-Briggs, which helps us understand our behavioural preferences. There's other things like Enneagram, which help us understand our emotions and how we regulate our emotions. There's so many amazing tools that we actually can use to help us really get a sense and understanding of ourselves as we go through change. And when I've worked with big organizations, often they will have been exposed to these, but sometimes they don't always refer to them, or they can't remember what they are. Often when I work with smaller businesses, they haven't always had the opportunity to to be exposed to some of these tools. So finding these things and getting to know yourself and getting to understand yourself a lot more can be really, really helpful in navigating that uncertainty and change. And I know there are a lot of members within the chamber that are accredited in some of these profiling tools and others, including myself. So, there are options and opportunities to be able to really expand that awareness. And one of the other ones that I would love to add, because I am part of the wellbeing team here at the chamber, is just really thinking about the concept of mindfulness and meditation when it comes to understanding ourselves. Because what meditation and mindfulness do is they help us come back to a neutral point, come back to center. They help, shut down some of the noise, help relieve and release a little bit of that anxiety and stress that we might be feeling. And when we regularly engage in practices like this, particularly as a leader, as well, is that we are able to really be present and aware. And that presence and that awareness just helps us bring in a lot more clarity, a little bit more wisdom, and it helps us see things clearer. Like, we really get a greater perspective. So the first way of navigating and working through change and helping your teams get through change is to really understand yourself, to really have a think about what it is that you bring to the change, what you can impact and what you can influence with that change. So the second point or way that I believe is really helpful in navigating change is to think about those that we're leading, and to think about what our teams and our employees actually want. Because, again, they are relying on us to get through those stages, to get out of the storm, out of the cloud, out of the dark tunnel. They're relying on us. So to think about what it is that they want and they need can be really, really helpful. And there's been quite a few studies done at Harvard, and particularly, in the last while as well, there's been a lot of engagement surveys, employment surveys and things done that are giving us direction and giving us tips on what we can do there. And I'm sure, like many of you listening to this masterclass, you will have also, have experienced and know some of these things to be true. So I'm just going to go through them really quickly, but understanding what our employees want. What they want is they want to be informed. They want the facts, even if you've only got a couple of facts or you've only got a little bit of information, because often when we are in a change, or we're in a place of uncertainty or unpredictability, we don't always have the facts, but there'll be something. They just want to be informed. They want to be considered. They want that empathetic approach. They want to know that you're thinking about how they're feeling, what they're thinking, what state they might be in. And they want to know that you are going to support them and that you have some support mechanisms in place. And again, another great thing I think we do really well here at the Chamber is that we do have a lot of support mechanisms in place as well. So what they want is direction and clarity, and they want both the short and the long term. They want responsive action, not reactive action. So often what I find when I'm working with teams is that when we're in change and things are, nobody knows what's happening, we're feeling a little bit, uncertain, is that often we will react. We won't stop, we won't think, we'll just go straight into reactive mode. So yes, we've got action, but it's often quite reactive. So what our employees and our teams want is they want responsive action, where we stop, we think, but we don't take too long, because again, we're in that space, we're in that uncertain place where we really want to keep moving forward. Our employees want practical and simple solutions. when we're in a state of unpredictability and uncertainty, there is so much complexity, and particularly in the age that we now live, work, and play in, there is so much information coming at us, and it can be really complex. And so, really thinking about practical and simple solutions can be exceptionally helpful. The other thing our employees want is honesty and transparency. And again, when I'm talking about what our employees want, this is all the stuff we want too, right? This is all the stuff that we have been looking to our leaders for as well. But we want honesty and transparency, and we really want to know what the real facts are. But leads me on to the next point, which is we want realistic optimism. So whilst we want honesty and transparency, we also don't want doom and gloom. We want it to be real, but we want it to be optimistic. We still want to know that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And as a leader, considering and thinking about the language that you use and the words that you use, because those words, when you are communicating or engaging with your employees or your teams, can really make a huge difference. What our employees and our teams want is to be connected to the future. So when we're in a place where we feel a little bit stuck and we're not sure what's going on, we're feeling a bit anxious and fearful, we want to know what the next steps are. We want to know what the future looks like. We want that hope. We want that optimism. We want something to work towards. And we also want to be connected to the vision, purpose, and values. So again, a lot of big organizations often have these very well articulated, don't always necessarily model them, but they often have them articulated. And if you are a business that has a vision and a mission and purpose and values, and they are the foundation for your business, when you're in uncertain times, this is when you draw on those things that you've put in place. This will really help transition and navigate your team through that, because that will give them the picture of the future. It will remind them why you do what you do. And your values, if you've got a really great strong set of values, will be your guiding principles, or should be your guiding principles, to help you navigate through that. And then the other couple of things that we've got here is constant communication, that constant and almost never ending communication. And I often say that if you have team members that, sometimes are rolling their eyes because they've heard it from you a lot of times, you're doing a really good job, particularly in times of change and uncertainty, because even though that's not what they might want, it's absolutely what they need. And it is helping reduce a little bit of anxiety and, confusion and all those other things that go along with us being in that, that ambiguous stage. And I always say constant communication, and to over communicate and really over communicate clarity and over communicate what it is that you want to get across. And what they want is stability from their leaders. So even though we're all human, and our employees and our teams will know, and it is important for us to be vulnerable too and share our own thoughts and feelings, they still want stability. So that comes back to really that self-regulation and really making sure that we're taking a calm, conscious and considered approach. And what they want and what they also need is belief in you and belief in themselves. So one of the things that I think I would say here is that there's a lot that your employees want and need from you. And that can be really heavy and that can be really big. And these things will absolutely help. And you don't have to be perfect in all of them. You don't have to tick all these boxes. But what is important is that you do get support to help you navigate your way through this, and to help you navigate your team through this. And so, we can't do it alone. And there are so many great options when it comes to getting support. But, one of the things that I've found helpful, and I know the people that I work with find helpful, is really making it a priority to collaborate and connect with peers, collaborate and connect with a network like the chamber or something like that that you belong to, but also to collaborate and connect with your teams. Because again, and I often see this in I see this in all levels: small business, medium-sized businesses, big organizations. Sometimes when we're in leadership positions, we feel like we have to do it all and have all the answers, and we often don't collaborate and connect with our teams at a level where we can generate ideas and get them involved. So which kind of leads to the next point: getting really vulnerable is absolutely crucial in navigating your way through change and getting support. So being honest, having those brave conversations with someone about what's working for you and not working for you, what you need help with. Because when we get vulnerable, we all know this, when we get vulnerable, whilst it's not always easy, and we share, most people want to help us. 9 times out of 10, people want to help and support us. So when we get vulnerable, we are opening ourselves up and creating space for that support. And the other thing that I would say is really important in navigating change and uncertainty and leading our teams through it, particularly as a leader, is to take time to rest, reset, and recharge. Because there's been a lot of study done that if we don't take that time to reset, rest and recharge, that our brains don't operate optimally and that we don't make great decisions. And often what we do is we become reactive rather than responsive. So it's really important to get the support and make sure we've got that in place. And again, the other one is to use your experts. Like we have some awesome experts and individuals that belong to the chamber that are able to give us that extra support and help as we navigate our way through it. You really can't do it alone. And look, I know there's a lot of information on the internet which can be really great, but there's also a lot of information on the internet that's not that great. And again, it can be really overwhelming. So if we're trying to find solutions and answers and, we're already in a bit of complexity and overwhelm, that is not helpful. Well, it certainly hasn't been for me. So, really reaching out and using your experts, because they'll know how to simplify things. And I thought I would share a tool that I use, which is from HBDI, which is one of the profiling tools that I use with organisations and individuals around thinking and strategy preferences. I thought I would give you an example of when experts really do help, and also a really great tool that you can use and will be kept on the slides. So this is with HBDI, and I'll give you the very brief, is that we have 4 sort of natural thinking preferences. The first one, which is the blue box, is our natural preference is for analysis, proof, and facts. And in the yellow box, it's for, we have a preference for being future focused, for being imaginative, for being visionary. In the red box, we have a preference for, interpersonal relationships and bringing people together, and we have a preference for for feeling and connecting others. And then with the green box here, we have a real preference here for safeguarding, for structure, for organisation. And so what I love about this checklist is that it really is a great one to use during change and times of uncertainty, and cover off holistically on all those thinking preferences. So if you look at the blue, like, do we have clear performance goals and objectives, data and research, budget, financial issues and outcomes, experts and knowledge to move forward? And some of us will be sitting here going, yeah, well, I always do that, because you'll have a natural preference for it. But you might not think about, do I have a strategy, a long-term strategy? Are there some new ideas and solutions I can put in place here? Can I tap into our vision, or can I recreate a vision for our future? Do we all have an idea of the big picture as we kind of get ourselves out of this change, this, confusion and this ambiguity? Are we stopping to think about, and do we have an understanding of our employees and customers? Is there a good way to communicate, an engaging way to connect, support mechanisms we can have in place? And, do we have clear priorities, plans and timelines, clear responsibilities, simple and practical processes and agendas and guidelines. And there'll be a lot of you that are involved in this masterclass that will go, yeah, well, I've put most of that in place. But there'll be some that haven't or haven't stopped to think about that. And again, when we're in a state of fear, when we're in a state of anxiety, when we're in a state of confusion and transition, and we're not really sure where to go, we always default to our natural preferences. So what we'll find here is we might only operate out of one or two of these boxes, and we might forget a couple of the others. So having tools like this and being able to reach out to experts that can share these things with you can be really, really, really helpful. So I'm sure I'm not preaching to the unconverted here, because you're all on a masterclass to find out tools, tips and tricks on how to navigate your way through. So I certainly know that, that you're already across that. I think it's just a really good reminder that support is really, really important in these times. And the last thing that I want to share with you is really about one of the ways that we can help navigate our way through change and uncertainty is to focus on what you can control, or focus on what we can control. Too often, and this happens a lot, and you would have experienced this yourselves with your own self, but also your teams, is that we get caught up in the noise that's going on around us. We get caught up in things that we can't change, and we get caught up in things that we can't control. And that actually creates more confusion, more angst, more anxiety, and more ambiguity. So, I've left this as the last point because I'm really passionate about this point, but this is one of the biggest things that will help you and your teams navigate their way out of, that change and that uncertainty. And I'm going to talk you through, there's a model that I use called CIA. So it's an acronym for control, influence, and accept. And I'm going to talk you through just a little bit of a definition that sits behind that, but then how I actually apply it as a tool. So the control is really about the elements of the thing that you can control and act upon. The influence, the influence are the situations in which you can positively influence an outcome. And the accept is things that you can neither control or influence. And the best way to bring this model to life, and the best way to use this model, particularly with yourself and with your teams, when you are in that ambiguous state and things are getting a little out of control, or we're not able to move forward, is to use these questions, these three really powerful questions, or I call them game-changing questions. So the first one is to ask this question: can I control or change this? Can I control or change what is happening to me? And if the answer is yes, you get a solution. So you go off and then you action it and you do something about it. Often though, sometimes we can't control or change things. So if the answer is no, we then move on to the next question, which is, can I positively influence this? And I love using the word positive, because we can influence and manipulate things, but that doesn't really serve us or serve those that we lead. So can I positively influence this? If the answer is yes, again, we're able to go off and, put an action in place, create a solution, come up with a strategy, implement something. We're able to do something with it. But again, if the answer is no, the next question that we ask ourselves is, do I choose to accept this? I can't control it. I can't positively influence it. Do I choose to accept this? And sometimes we'll have no choice. We just have to go, okay, well, I can't control COVID. I can positively influence what happens, but I can't positively influence getting rid of this virus. Do I choose to accept this? Well, it's not going to go away. So yeah, you do. But there'll be times where you will apply this set of questioning or this model to a change where you might not have to accept it. So I really love these questions because, for several reasons, they help get you out of being stuck and overwhelmed. They're also really empowering because when we're not in control, when we're feeling uncertain and we don't know where we're headed, again, the brain wants certainty. It wants you to feel like you're in control, and it wants you to feel empowered so you can move through move through those stages that I mentioned before. So what this model does is it gets you focused on what you can change. It does get you focused on what you can control, and it helps. It's really empowering because it brings you back to what's within your control. So I use this, anyone that's worked with me knows this model really well. I've been using it for well over 15 years. I adapted it from Stephen Covey's Circle of Influence and Concern. I sort of changed it and created it a little bit of it and made it my own, but I use it on my children. They now use it on me. It really is a game changer, and it really, really does help. So I have been talking at you for a little while, so I'm really conscious of that. So what I would like to do is now just open up to some questions, but actually before I do, I want you to just go back and think about those questions that I asked you at the very start. So when it comes to change and uncertainty and unpredictability, what was your personal challenge? What is your team challenge, and what outcome did you want to get? And I want you to look at the answers that you wrote down or the responses you had to that, and to think about the content or the material that I've been through today, and think about what might help for you. What is something that you could put in place that will help you navigate yourself and your teams and your employees through some change and uncertainty? So I'll give you a little moment to do that, and then I will open it up to some other questions because, this is a really, really big topic, and I run workshops that go for several days on this, so we've only really touched the surface. So there might be some other questions or some things that I haven't covered off on, so I'd love to open it up to some questions in a moment. So I'll actually stop sharing the screen now. And if Zachary's around, he might help me.
I'm always around, Kylie. If you have any questions, just pop them into the Q&A or chat function. And any questions you think of after this as well, feel free to contact myself or Molly McIntosh, who you would have received an email for with the link to join this. Just feel free to reply to that with a few questions or anything you want to ask Kylie, and we'll put you in contact with Kylie and move that conversation forward. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on, Kylie, before we?
No, not really. I mean, I would be happy to open it up to the group, because I know that we've got some live participants, but then there's going to be people watching.
Yeah. We have
Yeah.
Sarah Taylor here, who's asked the HBDI link. She asked if there's a way to access it at a minimal cost.
Yep. I can. Yeah, look, there is. You do have to go through, Sarah. You do have to go through a practitioner. So I know, like, sometimes you can go online, but there's some really, really affordable ways. And I'm actually happy to have a little bit of a chat to you if you want to reach out with that. Like, some of the you get a printout and you get some reporting and things like that, but there's some really affordable options. So yeah, I can help you out with that if you like.
Cool. And is there any more information on that type of thing you want to share for people who will be watching this post this event? Anything like that?
Would I be able to put like maybe a link to
Yeah,
some of that? Would that
yeah,
be, yeah, I'm happy to do that.
no worries. So we might wrap up there, and the and all further reading material will be supplied through the member resource page as well. So if anyone watching this post this event, you'll be able to find all the resources there. You'll be able to find Kylie's slides there, and you'll be able to find any links you might need. And if you can't find them or you would like them handed to you, you can email events@geelongchamber.com.au and we'll get you in contact with Kylie or any materials that you need. Thank you, Kylie, for an amazing and info-packed session. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. It's very informative. Thank you very much for your time, Kylie.
Pleasure. And, I will finish off by saying it really was a great privilege and honour to be able to run this and share a couple of things that I've certainly learnt along the way. I am a member of the chamber, so feel free to reach out to me if I can help you with any team or leadership stuff. And I'm also one of the supporters of the Wellbeing Program. So the beautiful Angie Hilton, Kate Meadows, and I are also running some workshops through the chamber to help you with wellbeing programs and workshops for your team. So make sure you use that beautiful resource and service that we've got and reach out to us.